Good morning. Welcome to the senior oral of Connor Alleman. Please be seated. Connor will be giving a talk over theology and technology. After the speech, we'll be discussing his thesis. If you would, please join me in an opening prayer. God in heaven, thank you for this time. And please grant Connor clear thoughts and clear words. Allow him to share what you have given him to share. In your name we pray. Amen.
What is technology? Did God create technology? Did we? Is technology a sin? I'd be willing to bet you've pondered one of these questions at one point in your life, and maybe you arrived at an unsatisfactory answer. That's what it was like for me and why I chose to study this. Everybody here has some sort of technology on them right now. Whether it be a phone, watch, or clothing, you have it because it helps you or makes your life easier. A phone enhances your ability to communicate, and a watch tells time. Technology has its upsides and, well, its downsides. Using technology properly will help you, while the misuse of technology hurts you. Before we can dive into this, we need to understand what technology is. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines technology as the practical application of knowledge, especially in a particular area. This is an okay definition, but as Christians, I believe we can use a better one. The definition I used throughout all my research was from the book From the Garden to the City by Dr. John Dyer. Taking God's creation and transforming it into something for a practical purpose. For example, a tree growing in nature is not technology, that would be God's creation. However, if you cut down the tree and turn it into 2x4s, that would be technology. Several people might disagree with that last statement and say that changing the shape of something isn't technology. How is that different from the phone in your pocket? The battery is made of lithium, nickel, cobalt, and many more metals. These metals are mined out of the ground and processed at a plant or factory where they change the shape of it to put it in a battery. Why is that technology but not making a 2x4? If it's the definition we set, I will clarify though, if you were just walking around breaking things for no reason, that would not be technology, as it serves no practical purpose. Any form of technology must meet the two requirements of being transformed and serving a practical purpose of some form. Now that we have an understanding of what technology is, we can determine if it's a good thing or a bad thing. First, we need to know what good and bad are. These two definitions are simple. Good will be defined as doing something pleasing in the eyes of the Lord, and that lines up with his character. Bad would be just the opposite, displeasing in the eyes of the Lord and does not line up with his character. In previous conversations I've had on the subject of technology, I've been told that it would be better if we were a bunch of naked people living in trees like monkeys. So, this would mean that cities, clothes, and any form of technology that we have are immoral and against what God has told us to do. I believe that just the opposite is true, and that God wanted us to pursue technology. When man fell and ate the forbidden fruit, the first thing Adam and Eve did was make fig clothing. Take note that God never got mad at them for this. He was mad that they disobeyed his word, and also take note that God never said not to transform his creation into something different. After that, when God was escorting Adam and Eve out of the Garden of Eden, he replaced their fig leaf clothing with animal hides. God is perfect, and if he can perform technology, then it is not a sin and is therefore good. God also wants us to build cities. In Revelation, God tells us that he is building a city in heaven for us. God created the tribes of Israel, which were small, movable cities of their own, and that wasn't a sin. Living in communities and building cities for the right reason is not a sin. Refusing to use technology would be like burying a gift from God. Without technology, a few things in your life might be better. You would talk to people in person more, and you would be more reliant upon yourself. People wouldn't live in cities but smaller tribes, and this would offer closer relationships to those around you. But so many things would be worse. Human history would have been lost, and we would repeat history repeatedly and not even know it. It would be significantly harder to spread the good news, and humanity would be much more divided than it already is. We once had modern medicine, so leprosy and every other ancient world disease would still be terrorizing us today. A world with technology is better than a world without technology. However, Adam and Eve's fig leaf clothing represents more than wanting to not be naked. It represents rebellion against God. It represents Adam and Eve trying to hide their spiritual brokenness. And it represents them trying to make a world where they could live without God. This may make someone think that technology is bad and it'd be better if we didn't have it, but let's look at the opposite side of the coin. Everything we do and have the ability to do was given to us by God. For example, God gave us the ability to sin and have free will because he wanted us to truly love him and choose him. This means that God also gave us the ability to create technology for a reason. I believe God originally gave us this, and that way we could reflect him. God is creative and can think and create things beyond our wildest dreams. Genesis 1:27 says that God created man in his image. God gave us the ability to create technology so there would be a little bit of his creativity in everyone. God wants us to innovate and wants to see what we will come up with. For this very reason, God did not bind us to live in his original creation. I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. John Dyer. Dr. Dyer is a web developer with a master's degree in theology and a doctorate in sociology of religion, all of which make him especially qualified to speak on the subject. When I asked about humanity's evil use of technology, he said that the nature of technology is good, but our use can be bad. This shows that the original concept of technology was good, just as free will, we have misused that. In free will, we find that it is both a reflection of God and an opportunity for rebellion against him. It reflects God as we get to genuinely love him, something we wouldn't do if there were no free will and we were forced to love him. It is a rebellion against him as we use it to hurt others and hurt God. A similar situation arises with technology. It reflects God as everything we create has a bit of God's will in it. It is a rebellion against him as we use it to spread the myth that we can live apart and separate from God. We rely on technology to fill some of the greatest holes and problems in our lives, but there are some problems that technology cannot fix, not only God can fix. An example of this is the story of Cain and Abel. When you hear the names Cain and Abel, you're probably thinking about their offerings and how God accepted Abel's and rejected Cain's, then Cain got mad and committed the first murder in human history. But the story is more than that. Cain was then banished by God, and then Cain will go on to create something called the anti-garden. Cain was forced to go east into the land of Nod. It is here where he created the first city, an attempt to set up an alternative to the Garden of Eden. This makes it easy to think that all cities are bad, but they're not. What is wrong with a bunch of people living together in one place, as even God is building a city for us? The city that Cain built was not bad, but the purpose of intention of it were bad. This concept is something I'll dive deeper into later. Cain was mad at God and attempted to set up a place where he could live without God. He was trying to replace God with technology. As I said before, the technology he used to do this was not bad, but we can all agree that his intentions with the technology were bad. In The City of God by Augustine, he says this of the city: "By craving to be more, man becomes less, and by aspiring to be self-sufficient, he falls away from him who is truly sufficient for him." God also gave us technology as a way to soften the pain of the fall. Genesis 1:28 says, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it, rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." This is what God told Adam and Eve to do, and in Genesis 3:16 through 19, God will make this harder to achieve. It says, "To the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you." To Adam he said, "Because you listened to your wife and ate from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow you will eat your food until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for the dust you are, and to the dust you will return." God made it significantly more difficult, but there is a way to make it less difficult. By employing technology, we can achieve the same product in an easier and faster fashion. It would be a safe bet that Adam invented a way to dig holes to plant seeds, a way to carry water to his crops, and it means a shelter for his family. As time went on, technology slowly advanced. We would eventually have permanent structures for shelter, irrigation systems to deliver water to crops, and more advanced machinery to plant and harvest crops. Technology can also extend your current abilities. Let us take traveling, for instance. You can walk to a place, but if the place is far away, like New York, this will take months. If you take a car or a plane, however, you can get to places much faster. Technology can enhance your ability to travel. Another example of this could be a microphone. If I wanted to give a speech to a stadium, no matter how loud I yell, not everyone will hear or understand what I say. With a microphone and speaker system, it can project my voice better than I can. Technology enhances my ability to talk. God not only approves, but encourages the creation of new technologies. Technology is one of the ways we overcome the effects of the fall, and it offers glimpses of heaven. Now that we've discussed that it is good, we need to decide if technology is the cause of your actions or if you are inherently responsible for your actions. There are two main philosophies on this: instrumentalism and determinism. Instrumentalism says that the tool or technology you are using is merely an instrument. It is not good or bad. It is neutral and does not affect your decisions. A statement that has been popularized by this philosophy is the saying, "Guns don't kill people, people kill people." This statement is true, but without the gun, no one would have shot anyone with a gun. Determinism states the opposite. It says that technology is the driving force of society and it is unstoppable. Determinists will even say that it is the reason for societal and cultural change. An example of determinism can be linked to our previous example. Guns kill people, people don't kill people. This is saying that technology has full influence on our actions and decisions. And in this example, the gun made the person pull the trigger. This is partly true. The gun does have a little influence on what you decide. Maybe the idea wasn't even in your head before you saw it, but once you saw it, it started influencing your thoughts. Technology can influence your thoughts and actions, but it doesn't have full control over them. So neither one of these ideas on technology is completely true, but they both have true parts. However, we can take the true parts of these philosophies to create a new true one that matches Christian theology. This would be, technology has inherent values, and humans have choice and agency. Back to the gun example, the gun gives the ability to shoot, but it is ultimately your decision. The gun did not make it for you. As I said earlier, however, technology does have its downsides and disadvantages. When I conducted my interview with Dr. John Dyer, it was on Zoom and we recorded the meeting. Because of this, I didn't take any notes whatsoever as I was completely reliant on the recording. When the interview was over, Zoom hadn't recorded the meeting. I started panicking as the technology I was relying on had failed me. Looking back, I couldn't even remember any of the answers that Dr. Dyer had given me. In a last-ditch effort, I emailed Dr. Dyer to see if he'd recorded the meeting. Luckily, he had, and now I had access to the entire interview. But in that email, he said this: "It's kind of funny that when there's a tech fail, it illustrates how tech extends our ability to meet, but also amputates our ability to remember." This probably struck me a little harder than he had intended, but I realized that in my life, I was completely reliant on other things, and not on myself, my abilities, or God. Then, when technology fails or leaves you empty-handed, we get mad at it, but it's completely your fault. From this, we can deduce that technology has a golden mean. Too much of it is bad for you, and too little of it is bad for you. There is that perfect sweet spot that God wants all of us to find while on our journey with Him. Technology is far from perfect, and it has its pros and cons. A phone, for instance, enables you to talk to people you wouldn't normally get to. Maybe they live far away. A phone disables your ability to communicate with some of the people closest to you. Think in your head how many times you've wanted to tell someone something. You see them in person all the time, but you text them instead. This ends up degrading your communication skills, and perhaps is the reason why many people would rather stay alone somewhere than interact with people face to face. Another example is the film industry, as film has revolutionized how stories are told and how information is passed along. We have shows such as The Chosen, which are meant to share the gospel with others. This is a good thing. We have cinematic masterpieces such as The Shawshank Redemption, Saving Private Ryan, and Interstellar, which can bring people together in a way that humans have never seen before. In that same industry that has created good, we have a subset of film that is nothing but evil. The adult film industry could be considered one of the most immoral things that humans have ever made, as it completely misuses and takes advantage of God's intentions for sex. It takes advantage of millions of people every year for the financial success of a few. There is even scientific research that shows that indulging in such videos hurts you mentally and your ability to operate as a human being. The National Institutes for Health found that it increases the likelihood of mental disorders and decreases your ability to function in common social settings. This is a clear sign that when you misuse technology, all it does is hurt you. But in the same industry, you can use technology correctly to create so much good. However, from this, another question arises. Why would God let us create these things? God stopped the Tower of Babel from being built. Why can't He stop other bad things? In my interview with Dr. Dyer, I asked if God was limiting our technology in some form or fashion. He answered that God does not put His foot down on things to stop them, but rather He uses them in the long term. In the Tower of Babel story, God told humans to be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth. Humanity said, "We don't want to fill, and we're going to stay right here." God then made a way that would make them fill the earth, and it's quite obvious that it worked. This is still what God is doing today. Every death, natural disaster, terrorist attack, and bad thing you can think of is there for a reason. I'm not God, so I cannot tell you what the reasons for those things are, but I can tell you that all things work out for the glory of God. In conclusion, technology is a God-given gift that He wants us to use to glorify Him, but it is also a God-given gift that we have used for our own selfish desires, so don't let technology control you. Technology can influence you, but technology is just a clump of atoms. It has no life. It cannot make you do anything. You, on the other hand, have life, and with that life, you can make a choice that can have an impact on yourself. Build others up with technology, because in today's world, technology is mainly used to tear others down, but that wasn't God's intentions with it. God tells us to build our house on the rock, and using technology allows us to build well. You can have the strongest foundation in the world, but a poorly built house will still fall. Use technology to build a strong house, then with a strong foundation, your house will never fall. Use technology to bring others up, and you and your life will be all the better. Thank you.
Good job, Connor.
Thank you.
How are you feeling right now?
A little relieved, still nervous.
Great. That's appropriate. All right. First things, what are your plans after you graduate?
I plan to attend Texas A&M in the fall to study engineering.
Very good. Any particular kind of engineering?
Hopefully mechanical. A&M's a little weird. They kind of throw you in one big pool with everyone, and then you decide after your first year.
Gotcha. So you've got to kind of fight for a spot.
Yes, sir.
Cool. All right. What's your favorite technology and why?
Kind of hard just to pick one. I mean, there's a bunch of different things. Like, for example, the combustion engine. That's like incredibly complex, but then incredibly simple at the same time, as I learned in advanced physics. You have things like the space shuttle, which kind of revolutionized how man travels to space, and then kind of paved the way for what SpaceX is doing today. Then you have things like Starship and the Super Heavy booster that are landing with chopsticks. I find those things are pretty cool.
Good. Any particular reason why? Like, what draws you to those things?
I mean, they're kind of like with the engine. It's like a rocket. It's like kind of simple. Like, it just uses fuel to make a reaction, and it just kind of throws itself into space. But it's at the same time is incredibly complex. So.
Interesting. Okay. Combination of simplicity and complexity.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Okay. So your talk was on this relationship between technology and theology. So what draws you to theology?
I mean, growing up as a Christian has kind of always been a talk in my life. And what kind of drew me to study the two together is, like, it's always talked, like, as long as I've been alive, it's always been talked about how we idolize it and how we idolize social media and our phones and how it's essentially become a god. That's really all it's talked about as in the church. The correlation's never really made between the two besides just that. So I was just kind of curious, and it led me down this hole.
Okay, so you wanted to see the fuller idea
instead of just the same thing you hear over and over again of us idolizing it.
I like that. Okay, here's some other thoughts I've written down. How do you define God's creation? Does it include humans?
I would say it does.
Okay.
So God's creation, easy answer would be anything created in those first 6 days that we see in Genesis 1. So the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, that would be God's creation. And I still think he's creating today on earth. It's kind of hard to see. You can't exactly say that's a brand new plant. He just made that. But yeah, anything, I guess what the world would say is natural, and that comes directly from God.
All right. If I use your definition, taking God's creation and transforming it into something for a practical purpose, are we supposed to modify humans?
Honestly, not sure. I mean, we're allowed to.
There's a range to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, should I give someone a hip replacement, or should I genetically modify them? Like, those feel like really different conversations, but they're part of the same one.
Yeah. I mean, God makes us separate than everything else. So I feel like when he's talking to us about the care of his creation, I feel like he's talking about one humans and then everything else. So I feel like caring for another human, if they needed a hip replacement, I feel like that would be the correct thing to do. But if I was to go and, genetically modify a fetus, I feel like that's not for the betterment of it's not for the good of society.
All right. I think I'm going to pass the mic, and I'll have more questions for you later.
Okay.
Hello. Great job.
Thank you.
All right. So one of the things I thought about after reading your thesis, which I really enjoyed, is What's the difference between tech and art? Because you use the word beautiful multiple times, and you talk about the film industry, which I think some people would consider art, and they do have overlap, but what do you think the difference between them is, and what different questions are they asking?
I mean, technology has more of a practical purpose in mind, kind of in the definition I said. I feel like art has more of a almost kind of like pleasure sense to it. Like looking at, like, say that painting right there, it's enjoyable to look at, and it's a wonderful creation that the artist made, but I don't know if I would call the painting directly technology. The paints and frame and canvas used to make it were technology, and I guess in a sense it still is, but art has more of a pleasure intention to it almost.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with tech, you're trying to like master something to some degree, or a skill, and then kind of like what you were saying with the art, it's more trying to communicate something, or something about the person who made it, perhaps, as opposed to just mastering a skill and kind of the physical laws of the world. Cool. Do you think we're obligated to make beautiful things and not just functional ones?
I don't think we're obligated to do it. I feel like the only things that we're obligated to really do in life is love God, love others, and share the gospel. Those are kind of the things that God tells us to do in life. I mean, it looks good when you create something beautiful, and I bet God is interested by it, and I don't know what he says in heaven when he looks down and sees the wonderful thing he created, but I don't think there's any obligation to create a beautiful thing. If two things do the exact same thing, one is terribly ugly and one is very beautiful, I don't think, at least in the practical sense, I don't think God sees a difference between the two.
Yeah. Do you think there's a harm when we get into the mindset of just optimizing something for our practical use? Because it's like a hard line to define, but I feel like I see it some. I mean, you go into buildings that are just full of LED lights, and it's like everywhere just feels like a dentist office. Or, you can buy furniture from IKEA or whatever, and it's just a machine like cut that piece of, lumber the same way without care for where it came from, or maybe any sort of like intrinsic beauty that it has, and we're just like, copy pasting furniture everywhere. And so, do you think there's a harm, like, when you just want to optimize a system or technology, like at some point?
I mean, my gut's telling me no. Kind of as technology's evolved, it's not like God ever gave us a stopping point and said, don't go past this line. You do, you're going to hell or something. But I don't think the optimization of stuff is exactly bad. Like LED lights, for example. I mean, yeah, I don't know if they're cheaper. I haven't bought lights in a long time, but they burn cleaner. They last longer, so it's a better product in a sense. I don't know if God would get mad at us for continuing to create technology.
So maybe it's more kind of like you said in your paper, just how we end up using it, or the extent to which we end up using it, more so than it's bad that we have it in the first place.
Yes, ma'am.
Cool. All right. Another way I see us using tech, and I mean the way I use it too, is a lot of times we use it to solve short-term problems and solve those problems for ourselves first, and not necessarily think about the consequences or what that could grow into for future generations, and potentially cause harm or bigger problems that people have to deal with later. And so, do you think we should be more concerned about the future, or what problems something could cause as we're creating, or is it fine to just create and use it for our needs now and not think about that as much, or where's the balance?
I mean, yeah, you should always be kind of looking to see what something that you make, what might have intentions for later on. But that was just kind of, and the effects of something in the long term. The effects of something affecting the potentiality of something affecting you in the long term that you didn't intend, I guess, is part of the effects of the fall. We started creating imperfect things. That's just part of human nature. The greed and sin gets to you, and that's obviously, and it's in your creations too. Without sin, our creations would be perfect, but they're obviously not.
Yeah. So that's just always essentially going to be a consequence of the things we create.
I think so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Let's see. A lot of technology also just seems to get nowadays offloaded to machines or other countries, or just being mass produced. And so do you think there's a difference between something that's created that way and something a person creates with their own hands in a more craftsman-like way?
I mean, when it comes to like the physical objects that are made, I'd say no, there's no difference, and that's just, once again, just kind of a part of the evolution of technology. Is our technology starts creating other technology for us. I feel like God gave us technology as like a way to make the effects of the fall easier. So with the fall, we were cast out of the Garden of Eden, so we had to create shelters. So we have houses now, and we want to put things in those houses to make them a little more comfortable. So like, say a couch, for instance. So now someone has to go make that couch, but now we have technology that can make the couch for that person and makes it easier.
Yeah. Do you think there's value in creating things that are going to, outlast you in a sense, rather than something you can just, if it breaks, I can go, to Target or Walmart and just buy another one?
From a human perspective, yeah. Having things that last longer has always been an appeal to humanity. But I think from what God sees, I feel like God is genuinely curious about our creations and technology and what we've made. I don't know how long something would last. Like, say a plastic milk container will last a lot less time than, say, a glass one. So I'm honestly not sure what he would think about those two things. Yeah,
it's just interesting to think about, and I know there's been, creators or artists or whatever over time that have had different perspectives about that. In advanced physics, we talked about Antoni Gaudi, who built, all his cathedrals hanging models upside down, and the most famous one he's building isn't finished yet, and it's scheduled to be finished next year, like 100 years after his death. And people asked him while he was alive, like, don't you care that this isn't going to be done in the time, in your lifespan? And he said, my client's not in a hurry, meaning God, which I think is a pretty interesting answer, and that it's cool that he did get to see a part of it, but he was like part of something bigger as well. And so, yeah, it's just interesting to think about. All right, last question before I pass the mic on to Mrs. Telshow. What's something you've made that you're proud of?
Well, it's not, just my creation. It's a team of people, but I'm in robotics, and I guess for the...
I was hoping you'd say that. You gotta flatter Mrs. Telshow before I pass the mic to it.
But it's probably something, at least recently, that I put the most hard work ever in my life into. And I guess it's kind of exciting and almost kind of prideful almost to see a finished product and see that it works after all the months that we've put into it to see the finished product.
You put a really cool system on your robot this year. Do you want to tell everyone about it really quickly?
I'm not sure what we're talking about. Sorry.
You know?
Several. We did odometry pods.
Oh,
we
yeah.
did a lot of programming. You did a lot of programming. I watched.
Do you want to explain that to everyone really
um,
briefly? Just because it's so cool.
Okay. So to help optimize how they work, it's good. It's kind of a good idea to kind of have it track where it is. And so the way we previously did that is we would just measure the amount of wheel rotations that's gone until it changes direction. So we know the circumference of the wheel, and we know the motors can tell us how many times they've spun. So using that, we can using trig, we can kind of guesstimate where the robot can guesstimate on where it thinks it is. But the problem with that is if it runs into something or if a motor's messed up, it's going to think it's in a completely different spot than where it actually is. So to combat that, we put essentially dead wheels on the bottom of the robot, and they just kind of spin, and they'll do whatever. They'll just kind of spin wherever the robot is. So they'll track the actual movement, and then with two y-axis ones and an x-axis, we can measure x, y, and the angle that it's sitting at, even if it messed up what it was supposed to do.
That's so awesome. Cool. All right, I'll pass the mic now.
I knew we'd geek out for this one. Yes. I love it. I would argue, we're talking about art here. I think the robots that we build are art. I think they're very artistic. They're very aesthetically pleasing and really complicated. So I'm proud of my robotics kids. So great season, by the way. It was awesome. I have so many things to talk to you about. I'm going to build on a couple of things first, though. You said it's kind of funny when there's a tech fail that it sort of amplifies our inability to do something. And I have to think of Google. Do you think having that smartphone in your pocket and being able to just Google things, does that help or hurt us?
I would say it does both. I mean, if it's something you haven't learned yet, like I don't have a good example in mind, but if it's something you haven't learned, the internet offers, different skill sets that you can learn, different things you can learn. But it also amputates your ability to remember, as you're now reliant on the internet to remember it for you. So I'm sure everyone in here has Googled something over and over and over again. You get the same answer, but you don't remember it. But you're reliant on Google or Safari or whatever you're using to remember it for you.
And the tech is really good at reminding us that we've already Googled that a few times.
Yeah. The autofill is there.
Mm-hmm. It's there. It's definitely there. Yeah. So I'm going to build a couple of things. I want to talk to you a little bit about the robotic world. And, you've talked a little bit about should we modify humans and that sort of thing. I want to talk to you about AI. And it's funny because in my generation, you see these giant leaps in tech, right? You think of 1900 to 1940. Man, huge, right? From 1940 to 1980, not so great. Still pretty big. But the leap era that you're living in is one of the fastest we've seen. So it leads me to ask you, because we've had a lot of talk here about like Chat GPT and those sorts of things. And you mentioned the fall. And you mentioned that the fall means that we come to face with our mortality, right? That spiritual connection to God is broken in that moment, right? And we're going to die physically. And I feel like if we have to face death, which is kind of a gift, isn't it? I mean, to not live in a world that's broken all the time. Do you think we should ever be able to upload or even consider uploading somebody's consciousness to an artificial thing?
I mean, when you say somebody's consciousness, I'm just going to assume the soul there. We have no scientific research or anything that can, in the brain for what makes someone think something. We can poke a nerve and make someone's arm move, but we've never been able to actually make someone think something. So by uploading someone's consciousness, almost you're taking their soul or a copy of their soul and putting it into this machine. And the soul is one of God's most beautiful creations. He only gave it to us. No other living creature in the universe that we know of has this.
Right.
taking it and experimenting with it and making somebody else's soul no longer unique, no longer one of a kind, to put it in a machine and try to replicate consciousness. And even that, I could feel like, is us trying to find an excuse for there being no God, saying if we're capable of creating life, why do we need God, even though you never really created life? So in that example, taking someone's consciousness, putting it somewhere else, I feel like is a waste and a disgrace to what God has done.
And not a thing, right? Because do you think that in itself is a symptom of the fall, that we don't really truly understand God's connection with us? Because there are people out there that don't know what a soul is. They think consciousness is all there is, and that's good enough. I agree. I don't think that's going to be a thing, but it's interesting. So we've had lots of discussions about this. I'm gonna read you a quote, because in the last few months there's been a lot of talk about robotics. There's been a lot of talk about humanoid things out there, assistants to do technologies that maybe we don't want to do, but if we could build it, we would build it, right? And I'm going to read you a quote from Lando Calrissian's robot, when she says, "Sure, some guy in a factory probably pieced me together originally and someone else programmed me, so to speak, but then the galaxy itself forged me into who I am, because we learn, Lando. We're programmed to learn, which means we grow. We grow away from that singular moment of creation because something new with each changing moment of our lives." Yes, lives. Look at me. These parts. I did this. So it's funny that science fiction, I'm a big science fiction nerd, that this is in our culture, that we have this idea that this robot, what's the danger with somebody like L3? They're not people. Can we begin to think of them as people? Can we be attached to something like this?
Attached, yeah.
Like R2-D2 or BB-8 or these characters that we have.
Yeah. Can, yes. Should, I'm not so sure.
Yeah.
Besides to reflect God's creativity, the purpose of technology besides that is, I guess, kind of unclear if he wanted us to do that.
Right.
We're getting close to capable of doing something like that. But I'm honestly not.
No, I love how you tie into your paper God's intention for our use of technology, because I think there's a lot of people out there that forget that there is a telos to technology that we need to be mindful of as Christians going forward in our world. And the last thing, I'm going to say really is in regards to maybe social media. And we fall into this idea that, do you think that these sorts of technologies collectively for everybody, let's say Facebook, is Facebook a good thing or a bad thing? For us as humanity, is it a good thing or a bad thing?
It allows you, once again, to communicate with other people. Also lets you meet people, and it's an opportunity to share God's word, but 99% of the time, that's not what it's used for. Most of the time, you start scrolling on Instagram, Facebook, whatever you use, it's more people trying to brag about their life. Like, I got a brand new BMW M5. What do you have? A little Toyota Camry. Yeah, that's right. I'm better than you. Sorry.
No,
I don't have a BMW.
I totally get that. And my last thing is, should we try to reverse or undo or forget technologies like this, or even just reject them and then go on without them, even though we feel like might be missing out by not having that smartphone or something?
In a good, perfect world, you'd use that technology for good. That phone would let you, once again, spread the good news with other people. And it's the I mean, and yeah, there's downsides to technology, but kind of like I said in the paper, there's downsides to free will. God gave us that. The upside is we get to genuinely have a relationship with Him. The downside is we can reject Him, tell Him we're too good for Him, that we don't need Him. I mean, there's those downsides to technology, but it's still there for a reason. He hasn't taken it away from us because of our creation.
So we as Christians just need to be smart, maybe, with these sorts of things and see what the ultimate purpose of these things are, maybe?
I mean, the technology itself isn't a sin. Like that water pitcher, I could use it to hit somebody over the head. Does that make the water pitcher bad now?
Right.
It was intended to hold water. It's just a clump of atoms. It's just a thing. It's not. God gave us the ability to create it, so it's a good thing, but in the sense it's not bad.
It's not bad. Good. Thank you. I'm going to pass it back.
All right. This is very interesting. I want to keep going on some really deep topics, but and maybe this won't be, but you said you wanted to bring up moral case for fossil fuels. It got dropped from your speech, was in your paper, so did you have some thoughts? Maybe introduce it a little bit.
Okay, yeah. So in Advanced Energy, we read a book called The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels by Alex Epstein. If I can find it. Here we go. And so that book, in today's society, most of the time, a lot of people see fossil fuels as a bad thing. We're damaging the earth. We're sending these pipes miles down into the earth, down into the Earth's crust. And then when we use it, it releases a lot of pollution. Companies are sometimes a little lazy and they won't plug the holes, and then all these terrible gases that are hidden down in the earth escape, and there are deaths because of it. And governments around the world, the debate is like, do we keep using it or should we start migrating to something else? And he made a case for why fossil fuels are the way to go.
Yeah. Did you have any particular things that you found interesting about that?
I found it really interesting that he was able to make the correlation in a couple of his chapters that the more fossil fuels that are used, the more human flourishing is present. So, for example, like the U.S. has one of the highest fossil fuel consumers in the world per capita. They are the highest. And we're one of the greatest countries to ever walk the earth. And then you have countries such as Somalia, which are among the lowest. So, for example, the life expectancy of a Somalian is 56 years, while here it's 77. Average yearly earnings of a Somalian are $590. In the U.S., it's $77,643. And then the GDP of Somalia is only $11 billion, while the U.S. is $28 trillion.
Good. Okay. I had a lot of questions, but I think I want you to talk a little bit about, you had this statement in your paper, technology has inherent values and humans have free agency and choice. Can you just talk about that statement in terms of Noah and his ark for a moment? So I guess my question is, what values did Noah's ark display?
It displayed, sorry, let me think for a second. The ark's a little different, as it was a commission by God himself for him to create. And I guess God was able to use his skills, his craftsmanship, and Noah's love for God to save humanity and save all the other creatures on the earth. So I guess the value of it, and that's a difficult example because God commissioned it. It's kind of besides from that.
Okay, so God commissioned it, but did Noah have to build it?
No, he didn't have to, but but his love for God, he was going to.
Good. Yeah. No, I think that's a very illustrative example of God being in the middle of technology and it being used well. And it, again, alleviates the effects of the fall. So it summarizes a lot of what you've had to tell us. So at this point, we hand you the microphone, so to speak,
Okay.
and you get to ask us some closing questions.
All right. I'll start. So I have individual questions for y'all. So Mr. Fithian. So at what point personally do you think technology has or will go too far?
Okay, can I have a moment to think?
Yeah.
All right.
Ms. Henson, if there was a technology that you could bring to life from science fiction or just creativity, what would it be and what benefit would it have to society? And Ms. Telshow, what technology do you think is in heaven?
I'm not sure of a full answer yet, but so you asked me, at what point do I think technology has gone too far? So basically, when has it upended God's ordering of things? I think that might be kind of the answer I would give. It's when it upends God's ordering of things. So, but it's, I don't know. He's done this really interesting thing where he's granted us things. Like if we take the sun, for example, it's very dangerous. You should never live there. But we've mastered whatever that thing is that's happening in the center of the sun. We made a bomb, and it hurt a lot of people. It messed up creation significantly. On the flip side, we take that same idea and we stick it into a power plant, as we talked about many times, and we get something that it helps people live good lives. So, I don't know, I feel like I can, to a degree, make a similar case for cybernetics, genetic modification. Like, should we modify fetuses? I don't know. Maybe it would be good for them to not be born with genetic defects. Like, why are there genetic defects? Well, I would argue that that's, to a degree, due to the fall. Maybe not completely, but it seems there's some issues there. So I keep coming to this idea that anytime technology is used to what I would say is replicating demonic intentions, it's gone too far. It's gone way too far. The problem is, I think you can use all of what God created to satisfy demonic intentions, to separate, to call the high one the not the high one. So, is that an answer that you're?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
And I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of like all the sci-fi stuff I've watched or read recently, which hasn't been much. All my initial thoughts have to do with just like planes or spacecraft or something goofy like the ornithopter from Dune or something like that, basically. I mean, it would just serve the practical purpose that a lot of our planes or, modes of aerial transportation serve now. But I think some of those more bizarre designs that are also potentially capable of space flight would be cool. I guess like you were talking about SpaceX earlier, and rockets just kind of fascinate me too. And so something that would just keep pushing those ideas that we're having to struggle and suffer through now forward a little bit more, but are also just fun. So
I'm going to connect this to your paper. You talk about cities, and you talk about the fallenness of cities. Sometimes when people get together and they're ungodly, that we end up with cities like Nineveh or Sodom and Gomorrah or Jericho, right? There's lots of examples. I also think that as a parent, I think some of the purest insight we get to the image of God is sometimes these lessons we learn from our children. So I'm thinking of like young kids when they find joy in building, and you give somebody, that little Lego set, and man, that is pure joy. God is a creator. I think in that moment, we reflect that aspect of God's nature, that he does take joy in making things that are true and beautiful and good. So whereas we have the broken version of cities and towns, God has the true, the good, and the beautiful version of what we've corrupted. So when you say what technology is in heaven, I think heaven is the most beautiful part of what we could ever imagine having, that he would create for us to live there forever. So what technology is in heaven? All of them. In the nature of God as he intended. So that's my answer.
All right. Well done, Connor. We'll say a closing prayer and we'll be done. God, we thank you for this time to spend talking about you and your creation. We thank you for Connor, for guiding and growing him in this topic, and who you're growing him to be as a man. I pray that as he goes forward from this place, that he would continue seeking you, and that you would build him up and bring him through the opportunities that you've led him into. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.